If the Grim Reaper ever tried his hand at interior design, his first masterpiece would be the Sedlec Ossuary, a chapel in the Czech Republic that takes hauntingly beautiful to a whole new level. From the outside, it looks like a quiet Gothic church minding its medieval business. But step into the basement, and you'll find yourself in an art installation that whispers memento mori, a place where bones are wallpaper, skeletons are decor, and chandeliers are made of spines. Holy dirt and the original influencer. The story begins in the 13th century when an ambitious abbot from Sedlec decided to go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Most pilgrims came back with a sunburn and a few stories. This guy? He brought back a handful of holy soil from Golgotha, the site where Jesus was crucified. In what must be one of history's most effective marketing campaigns, he sprinkled that soil across his local cemetery. Word spread faster than medieval gossip. Being buried in Sedlec now meant front row seats in heaven. Soon, everyone who could afford a grave, and quite a few who probably couldn't, wanted their eternal address to be in this sanctified patch of land. It became the celestial equivalent of a luxury condo development. Nobles, peasants, priests, all wanted in. By the 14th century, the cemetery was busier than a modern-day passport office. And then came the Black Death, which did not believe in waiting lists. The plague makes its mark. When the bubonic plague swept across Europe, Sedlec's popularity as a final resting place reached truly bone-crunching levels. In a few short years, over 30,000 new residents were added to the holy soil. Add a few thousand casualties from the Crusades, soldiers who probably expected a more glamorous ending, and the place was packed tighter than a Prague tram at rush hour. By the 15th century, the living had run out of places to bury their dead. So, in a pragmatic yet grimly creative move, they built a new Gothic church right on top of the crowded cemetery and moved all the old bones into the basement. Imagine a giant medieval game of Tetris, except every block was a femur. The bones were stacked neatly in pyramids, and there they stayed for hundreds of years, quietly waiting for someone to notice their potential. Enter the Bone Whisperer. That someone finally arrived in 1870, a local woodcarver named František Rint. The church hired him to tidy up the ossuary, a job that sounds suspiciously like being told to just reorganize the remains of 40,000 people. But Rint didn't just tidy, he transformed. He bleached the bones until they gleamed a ghostly white, carved them into shapes, and then arranged them into what can only be described as the world's most unsettling interior decor project. Rint's imagination knew no limits. He made garlands of skulls that hung across arches like festive decorations for an undead Christmas. He crafted chalices and crosses from hips and femurs, a choice that would make any anatomy teacher weep with equal parts admiration and discomfort. And in a flourish of noble gratitude, he even constructed the family coat of arms of the aristocratic patrons who paid for his work, entirely out of bones, complete with a skeletal raven pecking an eye from a skull. If Martha Stewart ever took an interest in necromancy, this would be her dream project. But Rint's grandest creation is the famous chandelier in the center of the ossuary. It's said to contain at least one of every bone in the human body. It dangles above the room in eerie splendor, shimmering under candlelight, reminding visitors that humans are surprisingly versatile building materials when properly arranged. A masterpiece in marrow. Step into the Sedlec Ossuary today, and you're greeted by a sight that manages to be both magnificent and profoundly disturbing. The walls are lined with bones polished to a ghostly sheen. Skulls grin from every direction, each one looking like it knows a secret you'd rather not hear. Ribs and vertebrae are woven into patterns so precise they rival the finest lacework. It's as if a choir of skeletons froze mid-song, deciding they'd rather be architecture. At the heart of it all hangs that colossal chandelier, dripping with tibias and teeth, its candles flickering like the heartbeat of the afterlife. It's the kind of light fixture that says, "I'm classy, but also, please don't stay the night." According to caretaker Vendela Krulova, each bone is still cleaned individually with a toothbrush. It's the ultimate dental irony. Thousands of skulls, none with a single cavity, receiving centuries of oral care they never enjoyed in life. Europe's bone boom. Of course, once you start noticing churches filled with bones, you realize Europe had a bit of a trend going on. Sedlec wasn't the only one to turn human remains into decor. A few hours away, Brno Ossuary houses the bones of nearly 50,000 souls, as if Sedlec had a big sister with a bigger skeleton collection. Poland's Chapel of Skulls, Kaplica Czech, takes the same macabre aesthetic and adds a touch of Polish gloom. Down in Évora, Portugal, the Capela dos Ossos welcomes visitors with the cheerful inscription, "We bones that are here await yours." Nothing says vacation vibes like a polite death threat in Latin. And then there's the granddaddy of them all, the Paris Catacombs, an underground labyrinth holding the remains of more than 6 million people. Compared to that, Sedlec is almost cozy, a boutique bone experience for those who prefer their mortality reminders on a more intimate scale. Still, the Sedlec Ossuary remains one of the most visited sites in the Czech Republic, second only to Prague Castle. Clearly, tourists can't resist a good chandelier, even if it's made of their ancestors. Why we love to be creeped out. So why do people flock to this house of death with such enthusiasm? Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's a subconscious desire to flirt with mortality without actually meeting it. Or maybe it's just really good content for Instagram. Standing beneath Rint's chandelier, people respond in all sorts of ways. Some fall silent, overwhelmed by reverence. Others giggle nervously, unsure whether to be impressed or horrified. A few whisper prayers, while others just mutter, "This is insane," before taking 20 photos from slightly different angles. Krulova once said that the ossuary is a transcendental place full of questions. Some visitors find peace there, others feel unease. Everyone leaves changed, though not everyone can explain how. The bones remind us, gently but firmly, that we're temporary guests in our own skin. And, one day, we might be as artistically useful as the people hanging from the ceiling. Getting there, if you dare. Reaching the Sedlec Ossuary is surprisingly easy, which somehow makes it more unsettling. You take an hour-long train ride from Prague to Kutna Hora, a charming medieval town famous for silver mines, Gothic spires, and, apparently, a bone surplus. From the train station, it's just a short walk to the church. At first glance, it seems unremarkable. Just another quaint chapel framed by cypress trees. Then you step inside and realize it's less place of worship and more art installation sponsored by death itself. The air is cool, the light dim, and every corner seems to whisper, "Welcome, mortal." There's a small fee to enter, and you can buy postcards or magnets at the gift shop. Because nothing says souvenir like a photo of 40,000 skeletons smiling together. Just remember, these bones once belonged to people who lived, laughed, and probably complained about taxes. Treat them with a little reverence before you post your selfie. And that, my slightly creeped out friends, is the Sedlec Ossuary, a place where death didn't just rest. It got remodeled. If you enjoyed this trip into the delightfully morbid side of history, go ahead and smash that like and subscribe.